The alarm bells rang through the deep space monitoring station like thunder in the cold darkness of space. Commander Jake Harrison jumped from his chair in the command center, his coffee spilling across the metal floor. He had been watching the quiet screens for 12 hours straight, just like every other day for the past 5 years. Nothing ever happened out here near Neptune. Nothing ever changed. But now something was different. The massive radio telescope arrays were picking up a signal that should not exist. Jake ran to the main console, where his communications officer Danny Martinez was working frantically with the controls. The speakers crackled with static and strange sounds that made Jake's skin crawl. Between the noise, they could hear something that made their blood freeze. It was a voice speaking broken English mixed with sounds no human throat could make. "Danny, clean that up," Jake ordered, his voice steady despite the fear growing in his chest. "I need to hear every word." The young officer's fingers danced across the keyboard as he filtered out the background noise. Slowly, the alien voice became clearer. The words were desperate, filled with terror that crossed all language barriers. "Please ... Earth fleet ... The Devourers have returned. Children of Terra. We need the Deathworld warriors. Galaxy is dying ... Only humans can stop them. Please remember your duty to the stars ... Jake felt his heart stop. Children of Terra. Deathworld warriors. Those were terms from the old history books, from the time before the Great Withdrawal, when humanity had walked among the stars. But that was over 300 years ago. Earth had turned its back on space after the first contact disaster. They had built their walls high and never looked back. "Keep recording everything," Jake told Danny. "Send a priority message to Earth. Command, tell them we have first alien contact in 3 centuries. Tell them someone out there knows we exist." The signal continued for another 6 hours. Sometimes it was clear. Sometimes it faded to nothing. But the message remained the same. Somewhere far away, beings who knew about humanity were begging for help against something called the Devourers. They spoke of humans like they were legends, like they were the most powerful warriors in the galaxy. Dr. Lisa Morgan arrived at the station 18 hours later on the fastest ship Earth Command could send. She was the best language expert on Earth, the only person who still studied the old alien languages from the first contact era. Jake watched her work as she listened to the recording again and again, her face growing more troubled with each replay. "This is Nalari," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "I recognize some of the word patterns from the old archives. They were our allies during the brief contact period. But Jake, this message is coming from the Kepler sector. That's over 400 light years away." Jake stared at the star charts on the wall. 400 light years. It was impossible. No human technology could send a message that far, and they certainly could not travel such a distance. Yet here was proof that humans had somehow reached those distant stars long ago. Lisa worked for 3 days straight, barely stopping to eat or sleep. She used every computer on the station to analyze the signal, breaking down each word and sound. When she finally called Jake to her workstation, her hands were shaking. "The full message is worse than we thought," she said, pulling up her translation on the screen. "The Nalari are describing something that destroys entire star systems. They call it the Devourer Collective. According to their message, it's some kind of hive mind that consumes all life on every world it encounters." Jake read the translation, feeling sick. The Nalari described planets stripped bare of all organic matter, space filled with the wreckage of once great civilizations, billions of beings dead or absorbed into the collective. The few survivors were hiding in the deepest parts of space, waiting for the end. "But here's the important part," Lisa continued, highlighting a section of text. "They specifically mention that humans were the only species capable of fighting. The Devourers in the past. They call us those who thrive on Deathworlds, and the warriors who never surrender. Jake, they're not just asking for help. They're saying that humanity might be the only hope the galaxy has left. The message was sent to Earth immediately. Within hours, every government leader on the planet was in emergency session. The United Earth Council had not faced a decision this important since the Great Withdrawal began. For 3 centuries, Earth had followed a simple policy: stay hidden, stay safe. Let the rest of the universe take care of itself. Admiral Kate Sullivan was called out of retirement to address the council. She was the last surviving officer who remembered the old days when humans traveled between the stars. Her grandfather had commanded one of the last ships to return to Earth before the barriers went up. The signal is real, she told the assembled leaders. Our deep space sensors confirm it originated from the Kepler sector. More importantly, our historical records show that we did have contact with a species called the Nalari. They were peaceful traders who helped us establish our first colonies beyond the solar system. The council chamber erupted in arguments. Some leaders demanded that Earth maintain its isolation. The galaxy had been nothing but trouble for humanity in the past. Others argued that they had a moral duty to help beings who were crying out in desperation. The debate raged for hours. Admiral Sullivan stood again, her old voice cutting through the noise. "There's something else you need to know," she said. "According to our archives, the humans who went to the stars never returned home. When we withdrew from galactic civilization, we left our own people behind, the children of Terra that the Nalari mention in their message. Those are our children. Human beings are out there right now, probably fighting and dying against these devourers." The silence that followed was complete. Every person in the chamber understood what this meant. Earth had not just abandoned the galaxy. They had abandoned their own kind. The vote was close, but the decision was made. Earth would return to the stars. Admiral Sullivan was given command of a new stellar navy, the first military space force Earth had built in 300 years. The shipyards that had been building mining vessels and research craft were converted overnight to produce warships. Jake Harrison found himself promoted to captain and given command of one of the new scout ships. As he prepared for humanity's first interstellar journey in centuries, he read through the old files about what humans had been like when they walked among the stars. The records painted a picture of a species that other aliens both respected and feared. Humans were described as relentless, adaptable, and utterly unwilling to surrender even in the face of impossible odds. The final transmission from the Nalari came as the Earth fleet prepared to launch. The signal was weaker, more desperate than before. Between the static and alien words, one phrase came through clearly in perfect English: "The galaxy remembers what humans can do. Please remember who you are." As Captain Harrison's ship launched toward the Kepler sector, he wondered if humanity could live up to the reputation their ancestors had built among the stars. Soon, they would find out if the beings they were racing to save would recognize them as the legendary Deathworld warriors, or if 3 centuries of peace had made them too soft for the war that waited in the darkness between the stars. The journey to the Kepler sector took 6 months using Earth's fastest ships. Captain Jake Harrison spent most of that time reading through classified files that Admiral Sullivan had given him access to. What he discovered changed everything. He thought he knew about humanity's place in the universe. The files told a story that had been hidden from the public for 3 centuries. When humans first ventured into space, they had not been the weak and peaceful explorers that Earth's history books described. They had been something far more dangerous. Earth was classified by galactic standards as a Class 12 death world, a planet so hostile that only apex predators could evolve intelligence. Most alien civilizations came from worlds where the biggest threat was weather or natural disasters. Earth was different. Earth had produced creatures that hunted other creatures for sport. It had created beings that thrived in environments that would kill most galactic species in minutes. Humans were not just intelligent. They were the products of millions of years of evolutionary warfare. Dr. Sam Parker, the ship's medical officer, made the discovery that explained everything. While reviewing the biological data from first contact, he found records showing that human physiology was considered impossible by galactic science. Humans could survive in a wider range of environments than any known species. They could heal from injuries that would be fatal to others. Most importantly, they could adapt to new threats faster than any other intelligent life. "Look at this," Sam told Jake, showing him an old medical report. "The Galactic Health Council studied human soldiers during our time among the stars. They found that humans could function normally in gravity fields that would crush most aliens. We can survive atmospheric compositions that are toxic to other species. Our immune systems can adapt to diseases that have never existed on Earth." Jake studied the data, feeling a mixture of pride and unease. According to the reports, other species had considered humans to be living weapons, not because they were cruel or evil, but because they came from a world that had spent millions of years creating the perfect survivors. The ship's pilot, Maya Johnson, found even more disturbing information in the military archives. Human combat units had been the most requested and most feared forces in the galaxy. They did not fight like other species, who preferred long-range battles with minimal casualties. Humans fought like predators. They got close, they adapted to enemy tactics in real time, and they never retreated when their allies were in danger. According to these records, Maya told the senior staff during a briefing, human mercenary companies were hired by every major galactic power at one time or another. But they were also banned from several systems because local governments were afraid of them. Apparently, humans have a reputation for taking over planets they were hired to protect. The engineer Carlos Rivera discovered the technical files that showed how human technology had been advancing even during their spacefaring period. While other species built machines to make their lives easier, humans built machines to make themselves more dangerous. Human ships were faster, more maneuverable, and more heavily armed than anything else in the galaxy. More importantly, they were designed to keep fighting even when heavily damaged. Every human ship had systems that other species considered insane. Carlos explained, showing them schematics of old Earth vessels, backup systems for the backup systems, weapons that could fire even if the main power was down, life support that could keep crews alive for months after taking critical damage. It's like our ancestors expected every mission to turn into a fight to the death. As they approached the Kepler sector, Jake began to understand why the galaxy had been so relieved when humans withdrew from galactic civilization. Humanity had not been peaceful explorers or wise teachers. They had been the apex predators of space, tolerated because they were useful, but feared because they were uncontrollable. The first sign of the Devourers came when they detected massive energy signatures near the edge of the system. Captain Harrison ordered the ship to stealth mode and approached carefully. What they found waiting for them was beyond anything the crew had imagined. 3 massive ships, hung in space near a blue and green world that reminded Jake of Earth. But these were not ships in any sense that humans understood. They were living creatures the size of cities, covered in what looked like organic armor plating. Tentacles hundreds of meters long extended from their hulls, reaching down toward the planet's surface. "Captain," Maya called from the pilot station, her voice tight with horror, "I'm detecting massive bioenergy transfers between those ships and the planet. They're not attacking the world. They're eating it." The planet's surface was changing as they watched. Green continents were turning brown and gray as the alien ships drained away all life. Oceans were shrinking as the water was absorbed into the massive creatures. Within hours, a world that had supported billions of living beings was becoming a dead rock. Dr. Parker's sensors picked up energy signatures from the planet's surface. There were still survivors down there, beings trying to hide in underground shelters while their world died above them. The Devourer ships paid no attention to the human vessel. They were focused entirely on their feeding. "Take us closer to those." "Life signs," Jake ordered. "I want to make contact with the survivors." They found the survivors in a deep cave system that had once been a mining complex. The beings that greeted them were unlike anything humans had seen before, but their desperation was universal. They were tall and thin, with blue-gray skin and large black eyes. When they saw humans emerge from the landing shuttle, they fell to their knees. Elder HFY, the leader of the survivors, spoke through a translation device that was centuries old. His words came out in broken English mixed with his native language. "Terran warriors," he said, his voice filled with wonder and hope. "The legends said you would return when the galaxy faced its darkest hour." Through HFY's memories, accessed by their primitive telepathic technology, Jake and his crew learned the true history of humanity's time among the stars. Humans had not just been mercenaries or traders. They had been the galaxy's police force, the beings that other species called when the impossible needed to be done. The memories showed human soldiers fighting in environments that should have killed them. They showed human ships continuing to fight even when outnumbered 100-1. Most importantly, they showed humans protecting weaker species, even when it meant sacrificing themselves. "Your people were different from all others," HFY explained. "Other species fight to win battles. Humans fight to protect others. Other species surrender when defeat is certain. Humans fight harder when things get worse. The galaxy called you Deathworlders because you came from a world of death, but you used that strength to preserve life." The memories also revealed the truth about the Devourer Collective. It had emerged from the galactic rim 50 years after humanity's withdrawal. At first, it had been a minor threat that the established powers thought they could handle. But the collective learned and adapted with each victory. Without humanity's unpredictable tactics and refusal to surrender, the galaxy's defensive strategies had proven inadequate. "The collective expects us to fight like civilized beings," HFY said, his mental voice heavy with despair. "They have adapted to counter every known tactical doctrine. They cannot understand beings who fight without logic or consideration for their own survival." Jake realized what the Elder was really saying. The Devourer Collective was a hive mind that operated on logical principles. It could predict and counter the methodical strategies of typical galactic species. But humans did not fight logically. They fought with emotion, intuition, and a willingness to sacrifice everything for others. As they prepared to leave the dying world, Jake sent his report back to Admiral Sullivan. The galaxy was not just facing a military threat. It was facing an enemy that had been specifically designed to counter every defense except the one that humanity represented. The last transmission from Elder, HFY followed them as they departed the system. "Tell your admiral that the galaxy has waited 300 years for the return of the Deathworld warriors. We have preserved the old alliance codes and the coordinates of surviving worlds. When you are ready to begin the war, we will be waiting to follow you into battle once more." Captain Harrison looked at the dead world shrinking behind them and knew that humanity's time of peace was over. The galaxy had called them back to be what they had always been, the species that thrived where others died, the warriors who never surrendered, the protectors who would pay any price to save others. Soon, the Devourer Collective would learn why the rest of the galaxy had once feared the children of Earth. Admiral Kate Sullivan arrived in the Kepler sector 3 months later with the largest fleet Earth had built in centuries. 12 massive battleships led the formation, followed by 40 destroyers and support vessels carrying 50,000 of Earth's finest soldiers. General Alex Thompson commanded the ground forces from his flagship, watching the tactical displays that showed a galaxy at war. The fleet's first target was the Hadrian system, where intelligence reports indicated 3 devourer bioships were in the process of consuming a water world inhabited by the aquatic Scifistories. Long-range sensors showed the planet's blue oceans turning black as the alien creatures drained away all life. Time was running out for millions of innocent beings. Lieutenant Colonel Maria Santos prepared her Marines for their first combat against an enemy that had been destroying civilizations for decades. Her troops wore the newest power armor Earth's engineers could design, built using technology that had been advancing in secret for 3 centuries. Each suit was a marvel of human engineering, designed to keep a soldier fighting in any environment imaginable. Remember what we learned from the archives, Maria told her battalion commanders over the comm system. Other species fight these. Things like they're fighting a traditional enemy. They use long-range weapons and try to minimize casualties. We're going to do something the Devourers have never seen before. We're going to get close and personal. The human fleet approached the Hadrian system using tactics that would have been considered insane by galactic standards. Instead of forming a defensive line and engaging at maximum range, Admiral Sullivan ordered her ships to accelerate toward the enemy at full speed. The battleships charged directly at the Devourer bioships like ancient cavalry, weapons blazing. Captain Ryan Blake, now commanding the destroyer U.E.'s Retribution, watched in amazement as the enemy reacted to humanity's approach. The Devourer ships were massive living creatures, each one the size of a small moon. They moved with the slow, deliberate motions of beings that had never faced a serious threat. Their defensive systems were designed to counter the careful, methodical attacks that other galactic species used. They were not prepared for humans. The first salvo from the Earth battleships tore through the bio-armor of the Lid Devourer ship like it was made of paper. Human weapons had been designed to destroy targets quickly and efficiently, not to engage in long battles of attrition. The alien creature's death scream echoed across space as its massive body convulsed and began to break apart. All Marine units, prepare for assault, Maria ordered as her transport ships accelerated toward the second Devourer bioship. We're going in hot and fast. Remember, these things are used to fighting species that value their own lives above the mission. Show them what Deathworlders really are. The Marine assault was unlike anything the galaxy had seen in centuries. Instead of trying to disable the enemy ship from a safe distance, Maria's troops flew directly into the creature's biomass and began cutting their way inside. Human soldiers in power armor moved through the alien ship's corridors like unstoppable machines, adapting to each new threat they encountered. Devourer drones that defended the bioship had been evolved to counter the standard tactics of galactic species. They were perfect for fighting enemies who fought carefully and retreated when faced with superior numbers. But humans did not retreat. When faced with overwhelming odds, they fought harder. Sergeant Danny Rodriguez led his squad deeper into the bioship's core, following scanner readings that indicated the creature's primary nerve center. The corridors around them pulsed with alien life, walls that bled acid and floors that tried to digest anything that touched them. Other species would have turned back or called for support. Rodriguez's squad pressed forward, their power armor protecting them from environments that would have killed unprotected humans in seconds. Contact front, called Private Maya Johnson, as something emerged from the walls ahead of them. The Devourer drone was a nightmare creature of claws and teeth, designed to tear apart any organic being it encountered. It moved with lethal speed, expecting its prey to freeze in terror. Instead, Maya stepped forward and emptied her weapon into the creature's center mass. When it kept coming, she drew her combat knife and met its charge head-on. The drone had been evolved to fight species. that feared pain and death. It had no programming for dealing with a being that welcomed close combat. Dr. Helen Chong, the fleet's chief scientist, monitored the battle from her laboratory ship and made discoveries that changed everything humanity thought they knew about. The war. The Devourer Collective operated on biological imperatives that made perfect sense for creatures that had evolved in a peaceful galaxy. They absorbed the life force of other beings to grow stronger, using strategies that had worked against every species they had encountered. But humans were different. Human biochemistry, shaped by millions of years of evolution on a hostile world, proved naturally resistant to the Collective's bioweapons. The toxins that paralyzed other species had minimal effect on human physiology. The fear-inducing chemicals that made other beings surrender actually seemed to make humans more aggressive. "Admiral," Helen reported over the fleet communication system, "I'm seeing something incredible. The Devourer bioweapons aren't just ineffective against us. They're actually making our people stronger. It's like our immune systems are treating the alien chemicals as performance enhancers." The battle for the second bioship ended when Lieutenant Colonel Santos reached the creature's central nervous system. Instead of trying to disable it carefully, she ordered her troops to plant explosive charges throughout the nerve cluster. The massive creature died in minutes, its death throes visible from space as its bioluminescent organs flickered and went dark. The third Devourer ship attempted to flee when it realized that its companions had been destroyed. Captain Blake's destroyer pursued it to the edge of the system, using human technology that had been designed for speed and maneuverability. The alien creature was fast, but human ships were faster. "Target their propulsion systems," Blake ordered his weapons. "Officer, I want that thing alive for study." The final engagement lasted only minutes. Human weapons, designed to punch through any armor, crippled the bioship's ability to move. Marine boarding parties swarmed over the creature's hull, cutting their way inside to capture key systems and biological samples. But the most important discovery came from the Sirathi survivors on the planet below. The aquatic beings had watched the entire battle from their underwater cities, recording everything with their advanced sensor networks. When Admiral Sullivan's diplomats made contact, the Sirathi leader spoke words that spread across the galaxy faster than light. "The legends were true," she said, her translated voice filled with wonder. "The Terran Deathworlders have returned. They fight like the ancient stories said they would. They do not fear death. They do not retreat from superior numbers. They protect others even when it means walking into certain doom." The news of humanity's victory at Hadrian spread through the quantum communication networks that connected the surviving worlds. For the first time in decades, a Devourer force had not just been defeated, but completely annihilated. More importantly, it had been done quickly and efficiently, without the massive casualties that marked every other battle against the Yao. Collective. Dr. Chong's analysis of the captured bioship revealed the Collective's greatest weakness. The Hive. Mind operated on logical principles, using vast computational power to predict enemy behavior and adapt its tactics accordingly. But human behavior did not follow logical patterns. Humans made decisions based on emotion, intuition, and moral principles that no computer could predict. "They're trying to fight us like we're any other species," Chong explained to the fleet commanders during their post-battle briefing. "But we're not. We evolved on a world that was actively trying to kill us. We developed the ability to make split-second decisions in impossible situations. Every human is essentially a chaos agent that their prediction algorithms cannot account for." General Thompson studied the recordings of the Marine assault and saw something that made him smile for the first time since leaving Earth. His soldiers had not just won the battle. They had enjoyed it. After 3 centuries of peace, humanity's warrior instincts had awakened with a vengeance. "Send a message to Earth Command," Admiral Sullivan ordered as the fleet prepared to move to their next target. Tell them the galaxy is about to remember why they used to call us the most dangerous species in known space. The Deathworlders are back, and we're just getting started. As word of the victory spread, something began to change throughout the galaxy. Worlds that had given up hope started sending out new signals. Old allies who had thought humanity was extinct began activating ancient communication codes. Most importantly, the Devourer Collective began adapting its strategies to counter the return of the species that had once been the galaxy's apex predators. The war was far from over, but for the first time in 50 years, the galaxy had hope. The children of Earth had come home, and they were everything the legends said they would be. The victory at Hadrian changed everything. Within weeks of the battle, Admiral Sullivan's communication officers were overwhelmed with signals from across the galaxy. Worlds that had been silent for decades suddenly came alive with messages begging for help. Ancient allies that humanity had thought were extinct began transmitting on frequencies that had not been used for 3 centuries. Commander Troy Williams found himself leading humanity's first diplomatic mission since the Great Withdrawal. His ship arrived at the Centauri Republic, once humanity's closest ally, to find a civilization that had spent 300 years preparing for this moment. The massive space stations that orbited their capital world were filled with museums dedicated to human history and archives containing detailed records of every human military operation ever conducted. "Welcome home, children of Terra," said Chancellor Vextai, the crystalline being who led the Republic. His translated words carried emotions that crossed all species barriers. "We have waited so long for your return. We never stopped believing that the Deathworld warriors would come back when the galaxy needed them most." Troy discovered that the Centauri Republic was not unique. Throughout the galaxy, surviving civilizations had preserved what they called the Terran Combat Archives. These were detailed records of human military tactics, strategies, and battle philosophies that alien commanders had studied for centuries. Every major engagement that humans had fought was documented, analyzed, and taught in military academies across known space. "We knew we could never replace you," Chancellor Vextai explained as he showed Troy through the archives. "No other species has the adaptability and aggression that comes from evolving on a death world. But we hoped that, by studying your methods, we could at least survive until you returned." The archives revealed something that amazed even the humans. During their 3 centuries of absence, their former allies had been trying to recreate human military doctrine. The reptilian Korash had developed rapid assault tactics based on human marine operations. The insectoid Zenth had built ships designed to fight damaged and keep going, copying human engineering principles. Even peaceful species like the Nalari had created military units trained to never retreat. Dr. Lisa Morgan, now serving as humanity's chief diplomatic officer, realized that they were looking at the foundation of a new kind of alliance. The galaxies. Surviving species had spent centuries learning to think like humans. Now, with actual humans back among the stars, they could combine alien technology with human leadership to create something that even the Devourer Collective could not overcome. The formation of the Neo-Terran Alliance happened faster than anyone expected. Within months, 57 different species had signed agreements to place their military forces under human command. It was not because they trusted humanity's intentions, but because they trusted humanity's effectiveness. The galaxy had learned that when humans led the fight, people lived through battles that should have killed them all. General Alex Thompson found himself commanding the largest combined military force in galactic history. Alien troops who had never worked together before were learning to coordinate their efforts under human tactical doctrine. The results were better than anyone had hoped. Species that were natural enemies put aside their differences when human officers showed them how to focus their anger on the real threat. The war's turning point came at Omega Station, a massive space habitat that had become home to millions of refugees from destroyed worlds. Long-range sensors detected the largest devourer force ever assembled heading straight for the station. Over 200 bioships commanded by something that appeared to be a superorganism, a creature so large that it dwarfed even the massive vessels around it. "They're trying to end this war in one battle," Admiral Sullivan told her fleet commanders during the emergency briefing. "If they can destroy Omega Station and all the refugees, they'll break the spirit of every surviving world. We cannot let that happen." The defense of Omega Station became the defining battle of the war. Human ships and their alien allies formed a defensive line between the collective fleet and the station, preparing for a battle that military analysts said was impossible to win. The mathematics were simple. The enemy had more ships, more firepower, and the advantage of numbers that should have made victory certain. But mathematics had never accounted for human stubbornness. The battle began when the devourer superorganism attempted to use psychological warfare, broadcasting fear-inducing signals that had broken the will of every species it had encountered. The alien crews in the defense fleet began to waver as terror filled their minds. But the humans were different. Instead of breaking under the assault, they got angry. "All human units, this is Admiral Sullivan." Her voice rang across the communication channels. "They're trying to scare us. They think fear will make us run. Show them what happens when you try to frighten a species that evolved by killing everything that threatened it." The human response was immediate and terrifying. Instead of falling back under the psychological attack, the Earthships accelerated toward the enemy. Human crews that should have been paralyzed by fear instead began singing battle songs, their voices carrying across the communication networks and inspiring their alien allies. Captain Nicole Foster commanded the destroyer UES, Valiant in the heart of the battle. Her ship had taken heavy damage early in the fight, with half her weapons destroyed and life support failing. According to standard tactical doctrine, she should have withdrawn to safety. Instead, she ordered her ship deeper into the enemy formation. "This is Valiant to all ships," she transmitted as her destroyer carved through the enemy ranks. "We're going to show these things what happens when they threaten our friends. Earth remembers. Earth returns. Earth protects." The alien crews watching the battle could not believe what they were seeing. Human ships continued fighting long after they should have been destroyed. When their weapons failed, human crews rammed enemy vessels. When their ships were boarded, human soldiers fought hand-to-hand in corridor battles that lasted for hours. But it was not just the humans who fought beyond all expectations. The alien crews, inspired by human example, began to push their own limits. Korash warriors who had always retreated when outnumbered instead charged into impossible odds. Vex-High engineers kept their ships running through damage that should have been fatal. Nalari medics refused to abandon wounded soldiers even when their positions were being overrun. The superorganism commanding the Devourer fleet had never encountered anything like this. Its tactical computers were designed to predict logical behavior patterns, but nothing about this battle followed logical rules. Beings were making decisions that actively reduced their chances of survival, yet somehow these decisions were leading to tactical advantages. The moment that changed everything came when Captain Foster realized that her ship was going to be destroyed. No matter what she did, her engines were failing, her crew was barely alive, and enemy bioships were closing in from all sides. Any rational commander would have ordered abandon ship. Instead, Foster saw an opportunity. The Devourer superorganism had moved to the center of its fleet, directing the battle through direct neural links to its subordinate vessels. It was a brilliant strategy that allowed perfect coordination of all the attack, but it also created a single point of failure that a desperate human could exploit. "All hands, this is the captain," Foster announced over the ship's communication system. "We're going to ram that big ugly thing in the center of there. Formation. Anyone who wants to evacuate, you have 30 seconds to get to the escape pods." No one left their stations. The U's Valiant's final charge became legendary across the galaxy. The ship, barely holding together, accelerated directly toward the superorganism, while every weapon still functional poured fire into the creatures. Command structure. Enemy bioships tried to intercept, but the human destroyer was too fast and too determined to stop. "This is what happens when you threaten our friends," Foster transmitted as her ship struck the superorganism's nerve center. "Earth remembers. Earth returns. Earth protects." The explosion could be seen from Omega Station. The superorganism suddenly cut off from its command systems, lost control of its fleet. Individual bioships began fighting independently, without coordination or tactical planning. The human and alien forces, still fighting as a unified army under human leadership, tore the disorganized enemy fleet apart. The victory at Omega Station proved that the Devourer Collective, for all their overwhelming numbers and advanced biotechnology, had one fatal weakness. They could not adapt to the fundamental nature of humanity, the willingness to sacrifice everything to protect others. Every tactical algorithm in their vast computational networks failed when confronted with beings who cared more about their friends than their own survival. In the weeks following the battle, something unprecedented happened throughout the galaxy. Species that had been fighting the collective alone for decades began coordinating their efforts under human leadership. The old alliance networks, dormant for centuries, came back to life. Most importantly, the galaxy began to remember that they were stronger together than apart. 1 year after the first distress signal reached Earth, the war entered its final phase. The Devourer Collective, recognizing that humanity represented an existential threat to their expansion, made a decision that would determine the fate of the galaxy. They committed their entire reserve force, including billions of bioships that had been held in the deep void beyond known space, to a single desperate assault on Earth itself. The collective's logic was simple and terrifying. If they could destroy humanity's homeworld, they would eliminate the species that had turned the galaxy against them. Without human leadership, the alien alliance would collapse back into the fractured, easily conquered civilizations they had been before. The plan was brutal in its simplicity. Overwhelm Earth's defenses with sheer numbers and consume the Deathworld that had produced the galaxy's most dangerous predators. Admiral Kate Sullivan received the intelligence reports with a mixture of fear and anticipation. Long-range sensors detected a fleet so massive that it defied comprehension. Thousands of bioships, some larger than Earth's moon, were approaching the Sol system in a formation that stretched across light years of space. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. "They're making the same mistake everyone makes about Earth," Sullivan told her staff officers as they prepared for the ultimate battle. "They think it's just another world. They don't understand that Earth isn't just where humans come from. It's what made us what we are." The defense of the Sol system revealed the true extent of Earth's preparation for interstellar war. For 3 centuries, while the galaxy thought humanity had withdrawn from space, Earth had been building. Every orbital platform was a disguised weapons system. Every mining station in the asteroid belt was a military base. Even the research facilities on the outer planets were armed with weapons that could destroy enemy fleets. Colonel Danny Rodriguez commanded Earth's planetary defense corps as the first wave of Devourer bioships entered the system. What the collective encountered was not the peaceful, defenseless world they expected. Earth's orbital defenses opened fire with weapons that had been designed specifically to fight enemies from space. Particle beams that could crack planets, missile systems that fired from hidden bases throughout the solar system, and energy fields. That could disable entire fleets. But the real surprise came when the collective attempted to land forces on Earth's surface. The bioships that broke through the orbital defenses found themselves facing something that no galactic species had ever successfully conquered: a death world in full defensive mode. Every human civilian was a potential soldier. Children who had grown up on a world that produced apex predators knew how to fight from the moment they could walk. Adults who had lived their entire lives in an environment that constantly tested their survival skills were more dangerous than the elite troops of most alien species. When the Devourer forces landed, they found themselves fighting not just an army, but an entire planet of beings who refused to surrender. Mayor Linda Evans of New Chicago led the civilian resistance in her city when Devourer drones attempted to establish a beachhead in the urban center. The aliens expected to face the same kind of desperate, unorganized resistance they had encountered on other worlds. Instead, they found humans who had turned their city into a fortress, using their knowledge of urban warfare to create kill zones that channeled the enemy into carefully prepared ambushes. "This is our home," Evans told her people over the emergency communication system as alien creatures swarmed through the streets. "These things think they can come here and take what's ours. Show them what happens when you threaten a Deathworlders." Family. The battle for New Chicago lasted 3 days. When it was over, not a single Devourer drone remained alive in the city. The human casualties were heavy, but the civilians had proven something that shocked even their own military leaders. Earth's population was not just capable of defending their world. They were eager to do it. Dr. Helen Chong, working from her laboratory deep beneath the planet's surface, made the discovery that would end the war. Her analysis of captured Devourer biotechnology had revealed something that no one expected. The collective was not the ultimate evil that the galaxy believed it to be. It was running from something else, something so terrible that even the consumption of entire star systems was preferable to facing it. The collective isn't expanding because it wants to conquer, Chang explained to Admiral Sullivan during a brief pause in the battle. It's fleeing from something at the edge of the galaxy, something that destroys matter itself, breaking down the fundamental forces that hold atoms together. The Devourers have been consuming worlds not for conquest, but for the energy they need to keep running. The revelation changed everything. The massive fleet surrounding Earth was not just an invasion force. It was the remnant of an entire civilization that had been driven from their home by a threat that made even their terrible hunger seem insignificant. They were refugees, albeit refugees who had chosen to survive by destroying other civilizations. Admiral Sullivan faced a decision that would define humanity's role in the galaxy for centuries to come. She could continue the battle and destroy the collective entirely, eliminating the threat they represented, but also condemning billions of beings to death. Or she could try something that no species in galactic history had ever attempted, offering redemption to an enemy that had caused unimaginable destruction. "Open a communication channel to the collective superorganism," Sullivan ordered her communications officers. "It's time to see if Deathworlders can do something besides fight." The conversation that followed was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. Admiral Sullivan, speaking for all of humanity, offered the Devourer Collective something they had never been given before: a chance to stop running and start rebuilding. Earth scientists had analyzed the threat from the galactic rim and believed it could be contained, but it would require cooperation between the collective and the species they had been consuming. "You've been fighting for survival," Sullivan told the alien hive mind during their first direct communication. "We understand. Survival. Humans have been fighting for it since we first evolved. But we learned something that you haven't discovered yet. Sometimes the best way to survive is to help others survive too." The collective's response came through a mix of biochemical signals and quantum transmissions that human computers barely understood. But the meaning was clear. They were tired of running. They were tired of consuming other civilizations to fuel their flight from an enemy they could not defeat. If humanity could offer them another way, they were willing to listen. The final battle for Earth never happened. Instead, it became the first negotiation between humanity and the Devourer Collective. The process took months, with human diplomats working alongside alien scientists to find a solution that could save both civilizations. The breakthrough came when Dr. Chung realized that the Collective's biotechnology, combined with human adaptability, could create defenses against the entropy force that was destroying the galactic rim. The war ended not with destruction, but with the most unlikely alliance in galactic history. The Devourer Collective agreed to stop their consumption of inhabited worlds and instead focus their efforts on consuming the entropy force that threatened all life. In exchange, the Galactic Alliance would provide them with uninhabited worlds and resources they needed to maintain their civilization. General Alex Thompson found himself in command of the most unusual military operation ever conceived, teaching former enemies how to fight alongside their former victims. Devourer bioships were retrofitted with human weapon systems and crewed by mixed teams of humans and collective drones. The sight of these hybrid vessels departing for the galactic rim became a symbol of what could be accomplished when different species worked together. The transformation of a galactic civilization happened faster than anyone expected. With the Devourer threat eliminated and their biotechnology now serving peaceful purposes, the surviving worlds began to rebuild. Human leadership had proven that cooperation was more effective than conquest, and species that had been enemies for millennia began working together. Captain Jake Harrison, now commanding one of the new exploration vessels, led the first mixed human-alien crew to venture beyond the galactic rim. Their mission was to study the entropy force and find ways to contain it permanently. What they discovered was evidence of an ancient civilization that had faced the same threat billions of years ago and left behind technology that could seal the breach between dimensions permanently. It looks like the universe has been dealing with this problem for a long time, Harrison reported back to Earth. We're not the first species to face extinction from forces beyond our understanding, but we might be the first to find a way to fix it permanently. The final scene of humanity's return to galactic civilization took place on Earth, where representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered to sign the new Galactic Cooperation Accord. The document established humanity as the mediators and protectors of galactic civilization, not through conquest or domination, but through the same stubborn refusal to give up that had made them legendary.